You have to look at everything that's firing on your website, dev tools, network tab, what's accepting cookies or not. So that's, we would recommend doing as the 4 layers. So consent management, consent logging, privacy policy, then script audit.
Welcome to the Bright Commerce Podcast.
Episode 28. Welcome back to the Bright Commerce Podcast. I am Carlos Caneja with Bright Code. I have my co-host which is Judd Dunnigan with Bright Vessel. How you doing today, Judd?
I'm doing wonderful, Carlos. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to see you. So today we're going to talk about privacy laws and your website. Not something that you should do someday, something that you should probably do like right now, as soon as this podcast is over.
Yes. Timing is right. Stuff is moving fast. Letters are real and fines are coming in.
All right, so let's dive in. So let's talk about the cookie banner myth. Most people add banners to their website that says, this site uses cookies. Got it. And they think they're covered. And why isn't that enough, Judd?
So I think a lot of people get confused with a cookie notice and a cookie consent. It actually has to have somebody opt in or do something, right? What happens is you might have a pretty little button that says, the cookie notice. They click OK. But if that notice is not doing things like actually actively tracking that visitor and also allowing them to opt out, which is why it's there, and effectively not be tracked, then it's not in compliance.
So basically having a dismiss banner, you have Google Analytics and a metapixel just makes you non-compliant, correct?
Yeah. So yeah. So, and this is where it was like putting, if you think of, what's the security company, ADP or not ADP? That's, I forgot the security sign you put outside your house, like if you don't have an alarm system, it might help for a while, but if someone actually goes and checks to see if your alarm turns on or not, you're in trouble. And I think that's the same thing. It's kind of happened for a while, with ADA compliance, it was for a while, no one did it. Then all of a sudden people start getting lawsuits because lawyers start taking advantage of the situation along with, people that they can gang up with to sue people.
We've ruined the internet, Judd.
Yes. I think we talked about this before. 2002 to 2005 was the golden era of the internet, in my opinion. Absolute. Everything was happening at one time. .com literally blew up and started to die a little bit, but I think that is like the golden era around that time where there was no rules. Now we have so many rules.
Yeah. So let's move it on. So let's, we're not just being fear mongers here and telling you this is what you have to do to be compliant with privacy laws. There are actually laws around this, right? So break down GDPR and CCPA for someone who's never heard of these before.
All right. So yeah, it is complex. And with all the acronyms, there's also other acronyms that can almost sound similar, but let's go into these two. So GDPR is an EU law. Doesn't apply to America, but it applies to EU-based visitors that land on a site, regardless of where your business location is. It's for users in those in those countries. It requires an opt-in, affirmative consent. There is no pre-ticketed boxes allowed. Silence from visitors, never count as agreement. So it really needs an opt-in agreement from the user. Where CCPA is a California law, it operates as an opt-out model instead. Under the CCPA, you're allowed to collect data by default, but you have to provide a clear functioning way for people to stop it. The opt-in versus opt-out distinction is really the core difference between the two laws. GDPR assumes the answer is no until someone actively says yes, while CCPA assumes the answer is yes until someone actively says stop, if that makes any sense.
Well, it's basically no means no.
Yes.
Ultimately, all we're trying to say here is that you have to accept. You have to ask for permission, and the user or the browser actually has to consent by accepting yes or denying, saying, no, I still want to browse your site, but I don't want to be cookied or I don't want to be tracked.
EU requires, though, the extra step. They have to make the selection. They have to make the decision. You can't just allow them to come to the site and not make the decision. So that's why the banner's up. It'll stay up until they make that. The other one is like You give them the option. If they don't choose to do that, well, too bad. It's on them.
So is CCPA just for big companies? Like, are there any thresholds per se?
Oh, I no, no. I think any business, if you're a business operating in the United States or a business operating, or, across the world in the whatever, you're required to be compliant. This is a law. This is not there's actually laws put in place. So, and most of the sites out there are not. They're just not. They're not. They're not at all. And it's just like even with we had a few podcasts about talking about ADA compliance. Same thing, people are just not doing it, which as a web agency, I'm constantly reminding them. So that way if they do get sued, they're not like, why didn't you not tell me about this? It's like, no, there are products, there are ways to do this. You have to kind of do it. There is a cost in most cases. And, you know, in order for you to do it the right way, you typically want like a platform, which we'll get into in later bits.
Let me ask you this: aside from CCPA, which is just basically California right now, are more states like following suit?
Yes, I believe Virginia, Texas, Iowa, and Utah all pass laws. No federal laws yet, state by state laws. So I'm not an expert lawyer, so don't take any advice from me as legal counsel. You want to check with each one of your state's laws and your requirements for compliance. The only way that every state would have to, obviously, if it's a federal law, which hasn't been done yet. But there's also even I know about the EU, but there's also new laws in Saudi Arabia. There's laws in Brazil. There's laws in Canada now. So it's growing all over as far as what you're allowed to take for privacy, which is kind of funny if you think about privacy. Like we give up everything in the iPhone. We allow us to be videoed, but now we have to opt out because of someone going on a website when you live off all your privacy anyway.
But to me, there is no privacy unless you're gonna like there is yeah, unless you're gonna live in like in the jungle in Peru.
Yeah, they literally have their iPhone being tracked by everybody and everything, but they're going to have to opt out on a website.
Yeah, and that's it's always been the case. I remember 20 years ago, being an American Express customer, I would get coupons billed from American Express from specific stores or restaurants based on my spending habits. So like, where's my privacy there, right? So it's funny we're talking about all this compliance because in the last 2 weeks we've actually heard from two clients. One is in California, and one is in Arizona, and they've gotten demand letters for not being compliant. Hi. So can you kind of walk us through that a little bit? Like, what do these demand letters look like? What do what can you expect?
So I think right now it's a big wave right now of CIPA, which is California Invasion of Privacy Act. God, California loves their laws too, don't they? It's old wiretapping statute that began to apply to modern tracking. Again, like ADA compliance was a 1994 law that they just threw to the internet, and it's the Wild West. It's pretty horrible. Like they still haven't fixed it. Where claims they're firing Google Analytics or Meta pixels before consent and equals intercepting communication. So there's a $5,000 per violation, zero proof of harm required. That's the main one. Like they don't even have to prove that this harmed anybody. They can just go after the violations, which now makes it major, scares the crap out of me because I think I have a few sites I still have to add a cookie. Actually, I probably shouldn't even say that on air right now.
Listen, we're all guilty of that, man. Come on.
Yeah, there's letters that are mass generated. Firms are auto scanning websites, sending template demands. It's literally phishing for money. That's what they're doing. Just like if you got a Pix right mail where it's literally some lawyer that works for a firm that goes after people for royalty free imagery. They're not even representing the client. They're literally finding ones that may be violating and then sending it to the actual owner of the image saying, hey, I found these people violating. I'm going to sue them for you. You want some of the money? Exactly what they're doing right now.
What do you do if you get one of these letters? Or well, like, first of all, like, I've never seen these letters. Have you seen them? I've just like, I've heard from a couple customers I've gotten them, but I never actually seen the letters. Can you answer that? And then what happens if you get one?
So basically, it names your business, your site, specific scripts that you fire, multiplies the 5K estimate sessions, with the scary number, how many times you may have violated, which, the 5,000, per violation thing. offers a settlement in 20 to 30 days, meaning just give us money because we're scared of you, not because you've done anything really wrong to us. So yeah, they're just like the royalty free imagery, bad letters, the ADA compliance letter. It's like doing business online is no funny. It's no more. It's not fun anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Should you contact an attorney if you get one of these?
Say don't panic, but don't ignore it either. I think you need to document everything. Think you need to audit your scripts. I think you need to proactively get consent infrastructure in place with timestamps, consent laws in place. Make sure all of that's done.
Yeah.
I would recommend speaking to an attorney before responding, but like anybody that's ever been through a divorce knows that attorneys make money off of defending you. But be prepared. Like I would try to find someone specialized in is what I'm trying to say.
And then obviously, yeah, you're gonna have to take some kind of action on your side, right? Which that's kind of what we're gonna like tap into next, right? What compliance looks like specifically to WordPress and of course WooCommerce. So give us like a practical breakdown for WordPress and WooCommerce site owners.
So there's four layers. There's going to be consent management, which actually blocks scripts like WP consent, compliant Z, cookie yes. There's consent logging, which is timestamps, records, who, when they consented to opting in or opting out, whatever. There's the privacy policies, which is accurate, current, that reflect your actual stack. So let me break that down because that sounded a little technical. That means in your privacy policy, whatever you do collect or do with visitor information, you have to literally spell that out. It can't just be a privacy, blanket policy that kind of just talks about certain things. You need to actually spell out what you're doing with data. Very important because that's another thing they can kind of nail you on. If you are doing the actual blocking and what you should, it's okay, but not having the privacy doesn't help your claim, when you try to explain it. So the script audit, when you do a script audit, you'll know, like you have to look at everything that's firing on your website, dev tools, network tab, what's accepting cookies or not. So that's, we would recommend doing as the four layers. So consent management, consent logging, privacy policy, then script audit. So that way you cover the whole ground and make sure that you have it. Then one thing that you must have configured, which is very important too, is, and a lot of people don't have, well, they are tracking, but they might not know really what they're tracking or how they're doing. Because you need to have GTM. I've kind of moved away from plugins and I use GTM and set up, advanced triggers, variables, and it's just a much better way to manage your marketing reporting. But you want to have configured consent mode V2 or tags fire regardless of consent state. So those are some things to kind of consider when looking at what compliance looks like, which is technical. Unfortunately, like most store owners or even website, let's be clear on that too. This doesn't have to be a store owner of a WooCommerce site. There could be a website owner, it could be a law firm, it could be, just your mom and pop shop that does general services, or restaurant owners or things like that. You have to, they're all needing to do this.
I got you. So we kind of went down the plugin rabbit hole with all of this. We thought that WP consent really addressed a lot of these. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, I think that does, that's a plugin that would do it, but I would recommend a platform more like Cookie Yes, for example. So I would say Cookie Yes is more of a compliance platform versus WordPress Pixel. I highly recommend using a compliance platform over WordPress Pixel just because it's going to cover, I think, all angles better. It's also going to give you a lot more tools than their job and their business is compliance versus a plugin that you just buy and install on your website.
Cookies is more like an actual platform, right? It's actively scanning your pages and so on.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, we kind of got sidetracked there, Flo. We don't really know these. We just started working with cookie consent. So, because like cookie yes is pretty expensive.
They're all expensive, man. Honestly, if you look at how you have to be compliant with all this stuff, next thing you know.
No, WP consent is like $50 a year for the plugin.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, some are less money, but I'm saying like the platforms, if you start adding up the monthly costs of the platforms that you need to be compliant,
Yeah,
like
right, yeah.
compliance,
Yeah,
cookie
yeah.
compliance.
Yeah, it's the cost to stay in business, man. It's the cost to be in business and be compliant,
Which kind of killed me Because you'd think someone would create a compliance platform that's really economical, that does everything.
I gotcha. Let's get into like a 30-day action plan here for our viewers and listeners. So give us the breakdown that we put together, Judd.
Okay, so if you're going to break it down to a 30-day action plan to get your site into compliance, first week is using the browser, going into incognito mode, dev tools, network tab, reload without accepting cookies, accepting cookies, and you start to see and list the third-party scripts that are firing. I will say if you're a simple website owner or store owner and you don't have a budget for a web developer, you could do a lot of this yourself and even use Claude, for example, to kind of work you through this, and tell you what you might need to do and what your site might need. So there is a lot of ways that you could use AI to maybe help you. Claude extension's a perfect one as well, while working within a browser in your site. So keep that in mind. Week 2, I would say, would be install real CMP, which is WP consent for WordPress, or like Cookie Yes as a platform, and then start that process too. And now that you gathered what you have to have that information for these platforms to do the correct settings, ensure your privacy policy has the right information. Week 3, rewrite the actual privacy policy to reflect what you actually do. In most cases, these tools will help you do that. If you're doing that yourself, again, I would highly suggest maybe use the Claude with the extension to see what your code is doing. And then, 4 is the consent logging, turning things on and making sure that you have consent mode V2 on in your GTM account.
Let me just add something real quick here for the listeners. If you find this like intimidating, it really isn't. I mean, for us, it's day-to-day stuff to, view source, view cookies, all that stuff. If you actually go to wpconsent.com/scan, it will actually list all the cookies and all the scripts that are tracking your users without consent. So that's one way to know if they're really compliant or not. Even once you do some kind of implementation.
Yeah, and the other part of this too is this is privacy policy stuff, right? So let's say you're a site that you just want you're a like a home improvement painter, right? And you just need a website, but you can care less about Google Analytics. You can care less about tracking. You just got to make sure nothing on your site's tracking anybody. Then you're compliant, right? You don't have to have the opt-in if you're actually not tracking anybody, because they can't prove anything if you have nothing on there that's tracking, right? So they're going to look at you like, no. So that's just something to keep in mind. But if you do have California traffic, I would definitely talk to a privacy attorney and know your position before jumping into this, action plan.
Yeah, and if you've already received a letter, like definitely get a lawyer. Don't negotiate alone. A lot of these are scare tactics
Yeah.
that they're going to use to leverage or for leverage rather than say. And just, if you do have to pay, just don't pay it without, speaking to counsel. And obviously don't ignore it either.
Yeah, and not every letter is a lawsuit. Some are just fishing, but you still need counsel to know the difference and your options.
All right, that's it. That's more for you to know. The more you realize the exposure, the better. But just keep in mind, it's all fixable. This is not really a complicated process. There's links here on the notes for the show, so you can visit some of these tools we mentioned. If you need help auditing your site or implementing some of these things, we're here to help. Just reach out to any one of us.
Yeah, letters are real, fines are real, but so are the solutions, Carlos.
All right, thanks, Jeff. We'll see you on the next one.
Awesome.